All right. So, welcome everyone. We have here with us our two honored visitors for the Kathina. I have Ayya Anandabodhi Terry and Ayya Santacitta Terry, and they've come to us from Aloka Vihara in the Sierra foothills in Placerville. And they're here for the day to support us with our Sangha Kathina. And I think they're going to help with some sewing a little later. They might share some Dhamma a little later. But for now, while there's sewing ongoing in the other room, this is a time for community sharing. And this is one of the meanings of Kathina, is for building community. So we're just happy to have them here with us. And we'd like to have a chance to check in with them about, hearing what's going on at Aloka Vihara. They've got some big changes recently and upcoming. And I'd like to invite them to tell us about that, just so we can all learn what's going on with our good friends. And so welcome, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for inviting us. And we're going to be actually here till tomorrow morning when we're going to go on our way Sacramento to support the Kathina at the monks monastery there, the Sri Lankan ABS temple. And Bhante Shanta from ABS temple has been particularly supportive for our ceremonies in the past. He was at our Bhikkhuni ordination in 2011 at Spirit Rock and has shown up at every Bhikkhuni ordination so far we have been. And we really appreciate the monks as well. And also Ayya Tataloka, who has been our Pavatini for our Bhikkhuni ordination in 2011. And we have our 11th anniversary on the 17th in a few days. And that's the day, when I'm going to actually move out from Aloka Vihara Forest Monastery. And as many of you might have already read or heard, we have decided that we're going to put the property on the market. We have decided that together with our board, of course, and we're going to put it on the market because it's just a very fire-prone area, which has become more and more fire-prone over the last 5 years. And it's very difficult for a small Sangha of women to keep that property safe. And that's one of the reasons why we have decided that. And in that big change, I have decided that I would like to start my own small place. It's not going to be a monastery, but rather like I'd call it a contemporary temple space. And I want to call this Aloka Vihara, Aloka Earth Room. So I'm going to take the Aloka bit of our name with me. Aloka means clarity. And that's a contemporary temple space which will be dedicated to the synthesis of Dhamma, ecology, and art. And we have found a rental property in San Rafael, which is about less than 30 minutes drive from here, actually. And that rental property is about 15 minutes walking from the smart train and the bus main station in San Rafael. So it's a very good location. And it's near to Gersel Park. It's near to everything what I need, in order to be there. And I want to develop that rental space into the Earth Room with the help of an Austrian artist, and also with the help of a few local women who have already committed to help me with that. And I hope towards the end of the year, I'll have more clarity, when it's time for the Earth Room to really, opening its doors. People can come by already earlier, but it'll take some time because, I want to paint that temple room in a very kind of intentional manner, so that the space itself will be a support for what I think is a really important step for humanity to take. Because I think we don't really know who we really are, and we don't really understand enough, that we are part of this planet. We are not separately just walking around on it, but we are part of it, and our root system goes deep into it. And I think that's the next step, for human beings to take in terms of developing, evolving, and, becoming more integrated with the way things really are. And I think the Buddha's teaching is an excellent toolkit to support that process. And at the same time, it adds, of course, another element to it, which is the element of actually stepping out of that whole circle of coming and going, which we call samsara. But that needs to be done, as far as I understand it, that needs to be done always in response to systems we are involved in. So just like now, I'm gonna for a moment stop. There's a big, I think, working for one's own liberation from samsara needs to be in call and response with what's going on in samsara. At the moment, we are working on our minds, because I think, the whole question of practice, we can't really take a teaching from the Iron Age India and then try to recreate that here in the 3rd century on the American West Coast. But I think we need to update, and we need to find contemporary ways to express the teaching, and to also allow ourselves, to allow innovation, really. And I think the Aloka Earth Room will be such a place. And I'm thinking back to my first teacher, Ajahn Buddhadasa, who has been a very influential monk in the last century Thailand. And he was such an innovator. And when I stepped into his monastery for the first time in April 1988, I was deeply impressed by the harmony, between what was going on in the world and how he had been able to communicate the Buddha's teaching. And I was particularly kind of intrigued by a teaching space which was called the Spiritual Theater. That was an art gallery, which was used for explaining Buddhist concepts such as the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, and so on. And when I saw that, it really deeply landed in my heart, because I myself have a background in the arts. And I thought, when I grow up in the teaching, so to say, which has taken a very long time, then I'd like to kind of do something similar. And I think the Aloka Earth Room is the beginning of that. And in a way, the fires which have come to Aloka Vihara Forest Monastery have opened the door for that to happen. So, we don't really know if something is good or bad, because it depends how you look at it. Yeah, so we are having very big changes going on in the monastery, and it's not for the first time that we have like some really deep changes. When we needed to leave the Ajahn Chah lineage, in 2009 we left from England, and then 2011 we became bhikkhunis here with Ayya as our Pavatini. That was also a very deep sea change for us, and it has worked out really well. And I trust, that this next change also will be what's needed, because it comes from the heart. It's not something which is just like a story I've thought out in my mind, but I've been allowing that to grow in my heart for a very long time. And I'm glad to be able to have the support from the Sanaloka Foundation, and also from Anandabodhi, who has been co-founding Aloka Vihara Forest Monastery with me, to do this, because I don't think there's anything of that nature out there yet. So I think I was always hoping somebody else would do it and I could support, but it hasn't happened. So I have to do it myself now. And yeah, and I'm glad, that the Dhammadharini nuns are quite close by here. So we can keep visiting each other and supporting each other for ceremonies. And So I'm handing over to Anandabodhi now, and thank you for listening. And please visit our website, with our newsletter for updates in regards to the Aloka Earth Room. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ayya Santacitta. That's wonderful. I like the part about just doing it yourself. I've had that too. I wanted somebody else to do something for me, and it doesn't quite work out. So congratulations on that. Anandabodhi, interested to hear from you too. How's it? What are you up to?
So it's interesting that line about wanting to support someone else to do it and having to do it oneself, because it's the same for me in terms of the forest monastery. I was felt when I lived in England in the Amaravati and Chittas monasteries, where there's a very strong hierarchy between the monks and the nuns, and it's sort of reminded on a daily basis. The nuns are reminded on a daily basis that they're junior and don't have a proper place really in the Sangha. I always felt like, it's really important that the women have their own place. And I wanted to support someone else to do that. And then in the end, it's like, oh, where are all those people who I thought were going to do it? Okay, maybe I have to go ahead. And so it's an experiment. It's been an experiment, and it continues to be. In fact, the whole Bhikkhuni order in 21st century America is an experiment. And so for me, there was a beautiful ideal of a forest monastery, which I lived in. I lived in forest monasteries before. And an idea that it would be possible just to sort of recreate what I knew in the UK, kind of, recreate that over here. And there are other, so like Anandabodhi obviously is a forest hermitage connected with Dhammadharini, and then Karuna Buddhist Vihara also have a forest monastery. So there are bhikkhunis doing that. And, being a foreigner, not really knowing the lay of the land, we ended up choosing a forest in an area that has become quite a serious fire hazard now in the last 5 years, really. So the county, El Dorado County, where we live, where Aloka Vihara Forest Monastery is situated, it's recognized that over the last 5 years, the climate has changed drastically, and there are more and more forest fires happening. So the danger of forest fires is much higher. And so the more I looked into, because I really love nature, I have a really deep resonance with nature. And for me, nature is a teacher. It is the Dhamma is taught by every leaf and every flower and every bird for me, and rock even. So I've been interested in what is the ecology actually of this area, of the area where we live, and what is the natural way. And the natural way is for fires to go through the forest every 10 years or so. That's how it would have been in the old days before the natural wildfires were suppressed. Then I was reflecting on, well, what does it mean to be a forest monastic, to live in a forest monastery or a forest life? And, in the old days, it would have been literally just wandering in the forests of Thailand for the bhikkhus, being very, very secluded, having very few duties, not having to maintain anything other than one's robes and bowl and body and mind, of course, mind essential. And it would have been a sort of quite a simple life, if not a hard life, but a simple life. And now what I found, we have a property that needs to be maintained, two properties, two buildings, and forest that needs to be maintained, and trees that die of beetle, bark beetle, that if they're close to the house need to be removed, which of course is expensive. And so it turns out that it's actually an enormous amount of work having a forest monastery. And then of course we have visitors, guests coming through, and then we're also teaching and sharing the Dhamma and have our community time. And when you add it all up, it becomes a very busy life, and there's a lot to do. So what we've found is that for the monastics, this hasn't really met their need. So it meets the needs of many people, and Aloka Vihara has been a refuge for many people. And the land itself is treasured really by quite a number of people, myself included, actually. And yet, to live there day in, day out for the monastics themselves, it's been, morning till night work much of the time. And so there's a movement away from that model to explore a way of practice that is, it's still in a monastic life, it's still a bhikkhuni vinaya, still the Buddha's teachings, but in a way that can be a little bit lighter, that can provide more opportunity for quiet and for stillness and for practice, as well as sharing the Dhamma and sometime in community. So it's an exploration. So we're in our next phase of exploration of that. So Santacitta, as she mentioned, is going to start the Aloka Earth Room, which is a very unique and innovative venture in a way that's very timely. And Ayya Ahimsa, who's been, just wait for this to go by. Ayya Ahimsa has been part of our community for the last 6 years, and she has been mostly quite behind the scenes, apart from the sutta contemplation, her weekly sutta contemplation, which is very popular and which she's going to be continuing. She's been very much behind the scenes, but she's been the one who's been taking care of much of the sort of organizing maintenance and fixing things and making sure everything's, like the painting is done when it needs to be done. And so she's been a real stalwart behind the scenes, taking care of the monastery nun, which is those are very precious nuns that people often don't see, but integral to running of a monastery. And so Ayya Ahimsa has decided, she's 62, and she's decided she wants to go back to her homeland, Canada, and have a quiet place to practice. And she has been invited to stay at Canmore Buddhist monastery and community in British Columbia. Alberta, thank you, not British Columbia. I don't know Canada very well at all, in fact. So in Alberta. And so she's on her way to go and live there. She's left Aloka Vihara now, is about to go on retreat. Or actually just started retreat for a month, and then we'll go to this very quiet hermitage in Alberta, where, all being well, she'll have much time for practice, and she's made great merits. So may they fruit for her in her next stage of her monastic life. And Ayya who's been with us for 3 years, who originally trained at Dhammadharini. They are about to go on retreat for a month, and then we'll be back at Aloka Vihara until the end of the year, and then we'll take 4 months of retreat, and then we'll be traveling to different Buddhist monasteries and communities and countries to explore, much in the way that the bhikkhus get an opportunity to. Often the bhikkhunis don't get that opportunity, so Ayya is going to be doing that for the next step of their monastic life. And for myself, so I will be at Aloka Vihara until January 15th, together with Anagarika Bethany, who is here today, not right here this moment, but you may see later on, and as our steward Cynthia. So the 3 of us will be there until the 15th of January. And we will be doing the last phases of preparing the house, the property for sale. So we're actually going to let go of the property. And my plans are not to make plans at the moment. So, I came over to the US with a lot of energy and intention and idea of what I wanted to do and how it might look. And we've worked really hard, and we've kind of made a certain, it's manifested. And yet it's manifested on the physical level, and yet there's something missing on the practice level. So my main plans are to take a sabbatical in 2023 from June through November in the Pacific Northwest in the Washington State, in a quiet little area where I don't know anybody, and practice. Really, that's my main intention. Probably in the early, I also be visiting my family in January. My mum will have her 90th birthday in January, so we're going to gather to celebrate my mother, my dear mum, and then probably have 2.5 months or so in the Bay Area, you know, to reconnect with those who supported us from the beginning and spend some time still offering teachings and still being engaged before the sabbatical. And so that's the sabbatical is from June through November. And then in December, I'm also doing a little bit of teaching. Santacitta and I will teach the New Year retreat online, as we do every year, either online or in person. And then I'll have another few months of sabbatical, which I haven't really planned yet, but probably will be more a little bit more adventurous on the external level. So those are my plans. So mainly drawn to quietude, simplicity, deepening the practice. And also in regard to the Vihara, you know, many people are sad that it's going to go and wonder why we're selling it and couldn't we give it to somebody else. And we've given it a really good go there. We've worked really hard. We've done our very best, and we wouldn't recommend to give it to someone else, actually, unless you have a big team of people who have, you know, lots of muscle. We wouldn't actually recommend to pass it on that particular place.
I really second that. You know, myself, I'm going to be 65 next year. So it's just not sustainable, really. So I think, you know, our board will take very good care of what's happening, you know, to this land and to the house. And our board is committed, you know, to support bhikkhuni ordination for women. And Ayya, Anandabodhi and myself, we are the spiritual directors to this Aloka Foundation. And, you know, and anyone who would like to join either through Ayya, Anandabodhi or through me, they can approach us, you know, when the time is right, when the sabbatical is over, and also when the Earth Room is opening its doors. And yeah, and it really, at this time, it's just a little breathing space for all of us, a little time to decompress and just allowing the Dhamma, you know, to speak to us and see what is the appropriate thing to do now, because we don't need to rush anything.
We might need to tip the camera just a little, but we can just also introduce our third member of the community here, who's here, Anagarika Bethany.
Do you want to say something? Bethany drove the
That's the really important detail. Hello, I'm Anagarika Bethany. Very happy to be here. Joined the Aloka Vihara community just at the beginning of September. I took Anagarika precepts. And yeah, delighted to be visiting Dhammadharini.
Okay. So get myself on the camera here, maybe. So I just want to say thank you for sharing. You know, I've been hearing things about what you're doing, and it's nice to hear from you. And I think it's exciting. You know, I know there's some loss involved, but also I really feel inspired to see so many different things growing, like all these different forms of the monastic life, that it's not just one thing, and that you're all going for where your heart is in monastic life and developing that. And then that's a strength, right? There's more options, more paths. So, we'll keep going with our forest hermitage, and it's true, it's a lot of work. But if each of us does our part in the monastic life, then I think that's a strength. And I'm glad, I'm really happy for all of you, actually.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to say when the Venerable Kachina is saying about the forest hermitage and that it is a lot of work. Ayya Kachina is a dab hand with a chainsaw. It's a very important skill to have when you live in the forest. It's sort of a natural, seems to be a natural quality for Venerable. Not to the same degree though.
And I have no interest to get on myself.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yes,
need to have many
do
many
enjoy
skills
it.
to live the monastic life. And I agree, it's we're like for the Bhikkhu Sangha, because it's been going for so long unbroken, there are so many opportunities, so many different styles, different countries even you can practice in, different ways, different teachers. And for the Bhikkhunis, we're just starting to make that possible. We're a bit like seed pod, just popping out and different seeds landing in different areas that can benefit people in different ways. And as a tea lover myself, got a cup of tea here. I was interested to learn that I think this is correct, that the tea plant, that there's just one tea plant. Tea is just a tea plant, but where it grows, the soil it grows in, and the kind of climate it's in, and how it's processed, makes it into all of these different teas that we can drink. Yeah, so like you can have, even green tea and black tea and so on. They all begin from the same plant.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on where they are living, where they grow, and what the environment they grow in, they manifest differently, and then you get all of this wonderful variety. So that's natural. So the Bhikkhuni Sangha, I think, is the same. It's like, we're all Bhikkhunis, and then where we are, what environment we're in, what teachers we're with, and then we take on a different flavor. And then some people are drawn to this flavor but don't like that flavor, and some people are drawn to that one but don't like the other one. And so then there's more possibility for an attuned place for practice for more people, all being well. That's the wish.
And also, I think also more precision in really targeting certain problems or issues or patterns one has, and precision is a definition for love, to take that care and to take that time to be able to really in a precise way address something, rather than kind of trying to fit everybody into one box. And then, because that's just not, it's working to a certain degree, but then at one point it doesn't work anymore, and that's okay. Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you very much for sharing. And I know I promised you a chance for some sewing or a little rest as needed. I know you've been all working very hard the past few weeks to get all this prepared. So thank you so much for sharing, and I'll let you take the time for what you like to do with your Kathina day.